the one, the only, Ben Sion. All right, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. And today we're doing Masechus Nazir, Daf Nun, number 50. Big number. 50 is a big number. Almost done with Masechus Nazir. I believe it's 64 Dapim. Today we're going to discuss some gory stuff about dead people. And in Ian with Ben Sion, we'll discuss a seeming contradiction between the Mishnah we had yesterday, the shear for amount of bones that make someone tummy, bones of a dead person. Is it a fourth of a kav or a half of a kav? The Mishnah stated a half of a kav for a Nazir, even though normally elsewhere the shear of tuma is a revius hakav. We'll try to answer that question today. Why the halacha is different for a Nazir of bim megaleah, meaning dismantles his count. He has to shave his head, count 7 days, and start counting again. Let's start at the top of Nun Amud Aleph. I remember Yossi. We're in the middle of a story where Rameir apparently died, and his Talmud Sumchus came and asked Rabbi Yehuda a question. Rabbi Yehuda didn't want any of the Talmud Rameir to come and ask him questions. He felt they were kantronim. They're contentious people. They were just trying to make him look bad. So he asked from the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, on Mem Tedam Beis, the Mishnah says that the things that are a Nazir Megaleach, enters the Naziros, dismantles the Naziros, is if a mace, a dead person, a whole dead person, and a kazayas been a mace. So he asked, if it says it, right? So he quoted him, Sumkas quoted Rabbi Yehuda's Mishnah. He says, it doesn't make any sense, right? If a kazayas is matami, certainly the whole body is bigger than a kazayas. So what do you say? He was upset at him. I remember Yossi heard this. Yomru Meir Shachal, Meir died. Yehuda Kas. Yehuda became angry. Yossi Shasak. And Rabbi Yossi was also a big rabbi. He was silent. Torah Matei, what's going to happen to the Torah? I'm Rabbi Yossi, Lo Nisrachal. Rabbi Yossi answered the question. Elul Meis, apparently he didn't have an answer. Elul Meis She'ein Alav Kazayas Basar. Starting with a dead person that decomposed. It had skin, let's say, had bones, but flesh. Flesh is basically muscle and fat. It didn't have a kazayas of muscle or fat. Nonetheless, since it's an entire body, it's matame. Adayin Yomar. So Rabbi Yehuda asked him, "What do you mean?" Adayin Yomar. On a limb, you said also in the Mishnah, a limb of a person, a complete arm, right? Even though they don't have a kazayas basar, right? So that ends his Nazir. He has to shave for that. Al-Kul, certainly the entire body has many evarim, many limbs. Ella, so the Gemara gives two different answers. Our Mishnah is talking, a mace is talking about not a living person that was dead, an embryo, that a fetus that was, a miscarriage that was born, and it wasn't really born. It was a fetus. It was a miscarriage. And it was in the early stages of the embryo where there were no ligaments connecting the bones together, or there were no tendons connecting to the bones to the muscle. So therefore, you're left with some sort of body, an embryo, which is, in the early stages of development, which is a mace in a certain sense, but it doesn't have specific limbs, doesn't have fully formed limbs yet. So therefore, that's the chiddush of a mace. That's the Mishnah meant that. Even though it's a fetus that wasn't yet born yet, that's what is still a Nazir's megaleach on that. Rava Maruk didn't answer. Here we're talking about where the mace has, right, it's a dead person, but it doesn't have all the bones of the body. It has rov binyano. It has most of the bones of the body, even though numerically it might not be the amount of the majority of bones of the body, or you have non-connected bones in the body, non-connected part of the skeletal system. However, let's say, I don't know how many bones there are in the body, let's say 300 bones, 151 bones. 151 bones. Or you have, let's say, even 100 bones, but they form together most of the body when they're still connected. So, and somehow it doesn't have a rova atzamos, it doesn't have a rova atzamos, it doesn't have a fourth of a kav of atzamos. We said yesterday, in the Mishnah, that's to have a half a kavat tzamos. This is seemingly contradictory. Normally, a rovat tzamos, a fourth of a kavat tzamos of bones is matame someone. The Mishnah was talking about Nazir Megaleach, So apparently there's a discrepancy between what forces a Nazir to start counting again and to go through this process of shaving his head and bringing the 3 korbanos. So here, whatever reason, it says she'ein ben rova atzamos. Doesn't have rova atzamos. Sounds like if it was rov minyan that had rova atzamos, that would be good enough, right? So that's really the question on the Mishnah. The Mishnah said chatzi kav, not rova kav. We'll have to deal with that question in Ian with Ben Sion. Al Gazayas based on Gazayas Neitzel. Bezu Neitzel. The Gemara, what's Neitzel? Neitzel is a fluid. Basar Hamesh Shakarash. So it's something either the flesh of a person, the flesh, again, the muscle or the fat of the person, Shakarash, right? That it congealed. Umoal Shartiach. Well, let's say it was still in a liquid form and you heated it up and it boils, right? Because we have to differentiate between saliva and mucus and other fluids are actually part of a body, fluid that comes from the muscles or the fat of a body. Mol shartiach, right? The difference is if it's saliva or mucus, you heat it up, it doesn't really boil. But the fat of a body would boil. What's the case? We're not 100% sure if it's saliva or mucus or it's actual flesh. Kikarash my heavy, right? It's a suffix, right? The fact that it's congeals, what is it? Must be we know it is from the person, meaning it is from the muscle or the fat. Afagav the low karash. Why does it have to be that congealed? Even if it's liquid, if it in its liquid state, it should be matame. I'm Rabbi Yirmiyah b'stam. We're talking about we don't know. Ikarash, if it congeals mole, it proves that it actually is part of the fluid of the body, or it's part of the muscle, a liquefied muscle or fat. Low karash del makicho v'niu. If it didn't congeal, we suspect it's maybe his mucus or saliva, and therefore it's not matame. Boy minei Abaye mirabo. Abaye asked Rabba, yesh neitzel lebehema or ein neitzel lebehema. This question is not really relevant to a nazir. The nazir is not matame from an animal, only from the corpse of a human being. However, a nevela, an animal which is a nevela, is matame. An animal which is as a nevela is matame, right? Not a nazir. It's not one of the things that a nazir is forbidden to come in contact with, or not something that makes a nazir start counting his naziris again. However, it does convey tuma, the flesh of a nevela, an animal that wasn't slaughtered halachically. So it just died by itself. Oh, a neitzel behemoth, or there's no concept of neitzel, meaning does the fluid is matame like the actual solid basar, solid flesh. Mi amrina and kamiri neitzel da asim adam. There's all kinds of neitzel. So we only learned about it by humans, but not by animals. So maybe there's no difference. Whereas tuma chamura ad leger, but tuma kala ad lekelev shapir. There's a machlokas in Maseches Bechoros, right? In terms of where does too much the veil of an animal extend to? At what point is it not considered flesh of an animal anymore? Meaning, if it decomposes to the point where it's not royal achilas adam, so then maybe it's not considered to be nevela anymore. So there's one madamar says tuma chamura in terms of imitami something else, the basar nevela, the flesh of the nevela. Ad leger, ger is mentioned the pasuk by nevela. Ger is a non-Jewish person, not actual ger. A ger tosha, not an actual ger. Ger, right? So it has to be fit for human consumption. The tuma kala ad lekelev. When it comes to the flesh of the animal, the nevela becoming tummy itself, right? That it becomes tummy until it's not even roy for a dog anymore. Once it's not roy for a dog, then, but even if it's not roy for a human being, it can still become tummy as long as it's fitting for a dog. Shapir. According to the other mandamar in Bechoros, that it still transmits tuma until it's still fitting for a dog, even though it's not fitting for a person. Ma'ikal and Meimar. What are you going to say? Tashma. So the Gemara brings a proof. Himchiu ba'or. This is talking about the nevela of a bird. The nevela of a bird, a kosher bird, is different than the nevela of a kosher animal. The nevela of a kosher animal is matami when you touch it. The nevela of a kosher bird is only if you swallow it. So let's say you had a nevela of a kosher bird and you melted it in fire. Tame becham tame. So if you heat it up over the fire, you cooked it, so it's still tame. Transmits tuma if you would swallow it. Becham ator, if ever melted in the sun, right? Where obviously it's going to rot and decompose. So then it's not. If you'll tell me paskin abla kelev that by nevela of an animal we go until it's right to be eaten by a dog, even if it's not fit for human consumption. I feel l'chamanami, right? Whatever laws apply to a nevela of a bird apply to a nevela of an animal. So therefore, even if it decomposes in the sun, it's not fit for human consumption, but it is fit for animal consumption. So the Gemara says, "Emas mamakile." What is this brisa talking about? When is he boiling? When is he melting the fat? Basar da asruach b'chama, right? Meaning when, right? Came on the asra havalei afar. You thought that when it decomposes in the sun, right? So then it's not fit for human consumption. It's fit for animal consumption, right? Once it decomposes in the sun, it's not even fit for animal consumption. So the Gemara really stops this discussion over here. And presumably the answer is it depends, right? It depends on this machlokas and bachoros, right? Because normally fluid, which is liquefied, this netzel is basically something which is probably not roy for human consumption, but is roy for animal consumption. So that we depend on that. Now we start a new discussion. The Gemara likes to start new discussions. Call a nitzok tohar. This is relevant to Maseches Machshirin. From Maseches Machshirin is quoted. Call a nitzok tohar. Normally, when you let's say you have 2 pots of liquid or whatever, and you're pouring, the top pot is tor, and you're pouring from the tor pot into the tummy pot. The bottom pot has tummy food in it. So when you pour in a liquid, right? If you think of a liquid pouring down, it could form a contiguous line from the top while you're pouring it. So does that line of liquid, when you're pouring it, connect the bottom to the top, and therefore matami the top and also the middle of the line that's in the middle between the 2 pots? So kol nitzak tor, and usually when you pour liquids, it does not do it. It does not join it. The top pot is tor, the line is tor until it gets to the tummy pot. Chutz me dvash hazifim v'asvichas. Except for very thick things, dvash hazifim is a very thick type of honey. V'asvichas is talking about some sort of mixture of honey and flour. Even if the honey is not so thick, when you mix it with the flour, it's more thick. These are very solidified types of liquids, so therefore we view them as being joined, and therefore the top pot becomes tummy. Then I'm on Beis. Beis Shammai argues on the Tanakama. Afa mikveh shall grisin v'shal pull v'neshi yisrael l'acharea. There's even a case. Let's say you have a soup or a porridge of grisin or grits, right? Some cornmeal basically. Shall pull, or you have some sort of stew of beans with a lot of beans in it. Because even though it's not as thick as honey, but when you pour it, right, and then you take it back and stop pouring it, it forms soletis. It's sort of, right, as opposed to, let's say I take water or something and I stop pouring it, right, so it just stops. It's not, but this, when you have porridge or something like that, so when I take the pot and I pull back, so the top part that's about to leave the pot forms like a line back. You see it going back into that. So therefore, it's viewed as thick enough to have a connection, according to Beis Shammai. By Rami Rachamas, Rami Rachamas asks, Yesh nitzak la'ochlin or ein nitzak la'ochlin? Is there a concept of nitzok for ochlin? Now, ochlin, we're not talking about actual food. We're talking about food which is melted, because this is what we were talking about before. Melted food, right? You heat it up in the fire. You took food and you melted it down. Right? Basically, you pass on Tanakam and not like Beis Shammai, right? Because, right, when it comes to the honey, the thick honey, so that's really a very thick mixture. But these don't have riri. These don't have, even if it's melted down food, it doesn't have basically remnants. Riri are remnants. It doesn't have remnants. It's poured out, you pour it back, you stop pouring, it just stops. Maybe you say it's thick. Maybe the reason that dvash, right, at the thick honey, according to Tanakama, is it because, right, it has like soledis, like it has remnants going back, and food which is heated up doesn't, but it happens to be that when you heat up food and you melt it down, it's very thick, so it's like honey. Amaro Tashma Chelev Hameis Hu Shalim veiticho tame. Let's say you had fat of a dead person. Shehu shalim, right? It's the size of a kazayas. And you melted it down, tame. Right? It's still matame, like a corpse. Let's say you cut up the kazayas of the fat into little pieces, veiticho, and you melted it down, and now it joined together, Torah. Because at the time when you melted it, it wasn't shalim. If you'll tell me there's no concept of nitzok la'ochlin, shalim veiticho and amili tire, right? When you heat up food and you melt it down, so in the process while you're heating it up, it sort of detaches from itself, the kazayas, and then it comes back together. So it should be tar. Amar of Zera, Ana Omar Bered Ravina Targimna Hacha the Maya skin and going to Bahadi the Mirtach like Salik Abud the Nura Lapume the Mana Bakarush. And these say Kula Gabe Hadot. Here we're talking about where you heat up on extreme fire, and therefore it's sort of you took the kazayas of food and you wanted to melt it, and it was so much fire it popped from the bottom to the top of the pot. It got stuck on the top of the pot, and therefore it melted on the top of the pot, and then it congealed after it cooled down. It congealed, so therefore it never broke apart. So that's what we're talking about. I'm like Ravino Ravashi Tashma, which I only af hamafish of Greece of love, and they should sold it. Right? Beishal start bringing a proof from Beishamai. They say even a porridge of grits or a porridge of beans, a stew, because they're sold it. La'achareya. Me the area hasam mishum tzmicha and hakam mishum riris. The Gemara says it's not a proof from Beit Shammai because it could be really about possibly the Tanakama, right? There, the reason is Oakland has ririn, right? If you melt it down, it'll be sort of like grits that it'll trickle back down when you stop pouring. But it's not as thick as very thick honey. So therefore, that's the Tanakama's opinion. It has to be very thick. So maybe, in fact, it's not. The Gemara leaves this as a question. The Almali Tarvad Ra Rekev. The Mishnah stated also, if you burn a corpse down into ashes, right? So how much ashes do you need in order to transmit tumah? Kamashiro. Chizki Amar, Mali Tarvad Rekev literally means a spoonful of afar, of dust, corpse dust. Kamashiro. Chizki Amar Mali Pisas Hayad. He says it's a palmful you have over here, right? The amount you put in your palm, not the entire hand, your palm. Chizki Amar, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Mali Chafna. It has to be the entire amount of your hand, including your fingers. Tanan. Mishnah says Mali Tarvid Reko Sha'amru Yeshnan Meikar Etzbo Salamala. Divrei Meir. So we have a Mishnah that talks about it. What is Mali Tarvid Reko? Whenever the Gemara talks about it, or the Mishnayos talk about it, it's the Ikar Etzbo from their knuckles over here to the bottom of your fingers. That's right. Meir says Rabbanan Amri Chavar Mali Chafna. They say the entire hand. Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan who Amar Rabbanan. He has an opinion like Rabbanan. No one says like Chizkiah. Where's he getting his shita from? Amri, so the answer, Mali Pisa Yad, Umali Kishrei Ezbosav, Lamala Chachi Yoru. The same amount that you can fit from here to here, is the same amount you would fit in your palm. It's the same thing. So he holds like Rav Amar Le Rav Sim Barado Rav Papa, Yimai Dahai Mikishrei Ezbosav. Another answer the Gemara gives. How do you know that from the knuckles down, Lamala, the Rosh, is going downwards? Dilma Lamata. Maybe it's going down or up, right? It's going from the knuckles and back, right, to encompass not the mount in the fingers, but the mount in the palm, right? Yeah, it's exact. That's what Chizkiah said. Take. So the Gemara says it's unsure. It's unsure who the halacha is like, right? Who the halacha is like? Is it like a mayor or like a rabbanon? Basically, said Chizkiah is right mayor. Both answers say Chizkiah is right mayor. The Chachamim say you need, like Rabbi Yochanan, you need the amount you'd fit in one hand. So to take, who do you pass like Rabbi Yochanan or Chizkiah? Probably pass like the Rabbanan, but the Gemara leaves it as a suffix over here, and therefore, since it's a suffix, so therefore suffix tuma, the way you adjudicate suffix tuma, if you're dealing with in a public sphere versus a rabbin, then you go tohor. If it's Rosh Hashanah, it's a private place, then you would go Tameh. That's generally the way you adjudicate cases of Suffolk and Tuma and Tara. I hope you enjoyed today's share. Stay tuned for Ian Ben Sion. It's not easy to come with an Ian Ben Sion share on something about Tuma and Tara that I have very little knowledge about. I've never learned the Mishnayos and Seder Taros. But I do have a big Chiddush over here that's related to Nazir. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this year, I'll be giving it about rova. It's almost, is it a half a kav or a fourth of a kav of bones that make a nazir and make a leah? We'll talk about it, Ben Sion, coming up next.